Hi there. Antarctica, the last unclaimed wilderness. Or is it? Have you ever found it curious how Antarctica seems to gain so much attention? After all, it's the only continent that has no indigenous population. There's a treaty in place to prevent any military presence and keep it exclusively for scientific purposes. For all the rhetoric about keeping the area pristine though, consider the decommissioned nuclear power plant in McMurdo that was shut down in the 70s due to its unreliability. That fact accentuated by the 438 malfunctions in less than 10 years. Radiation exposure still means the area looks pristine though, so that's okay I guess. If you want to sail or go at your own risk, you need to obtain a permit. This seems a bit strange, as no one actually owns the continent, even though several claims and agreements have been made. So why would you ask permission to go down to explore this vast ice continent? Then there's the excuse that scientists can perform tests on a land where no human presence will mean untainted specimen retrieval or study. But if that's true, I don't see these scientific bases springing up in the massive deserts around the world. So why is cold needed? Is it really to contain new strains of deadly flues and gases, or at the very least long-lost seeds from now non-existent plants available for study and exploit? In fact, now I think of it, what have we really learned or created based on the decades of study at the South Pole? That's an awful lot of money with not much to show but some ice core samples and visiting the southernmost pub in the world. Why are there so many high-level visiting dignitaries to the continent? I can't believe it's just a bucket list thing at the taxpayer's expense. Princes, secretaries of state, church heads, in the past Nazi elite, and no less even than Buzz Aldrin have gone to the frozen area for little more than a selfie, judging by the media. Harry and his band of wounded servicemen were a little different, but for all the media attention he might as well have just done a couple of short TV advert spots asking for donations. After all, by the time the trip, gear, evacuation and bodyguards were paid for by the taxpayer, the couple of 100,000 raised would most certainly have been spent, and more. Perhaps they were visiting Lockheed Martin of aerospace patent fame to ask how their anti-gravity research was progressing in the freezing temperatures. Maybe they were testing or finding UFOs on the ice, so thank goodness there were no longer dogs allowed down there, in case John Carpenter's The Thing starts to happen. But the lack of canines is probably because the owners were sick of going out in -20 to pick up the poop, and then realised they had nowhere to dispose of the plastic waste bags. The real worry here seems to be potential claims on mineral rights or land itself, limited though both would be because of the extreme conditions. But I do believe with new inventions every day that at some point this will become viable. It was only a couple of years ago there was a flurry of so-called news stories reporting a race to the moon to mine helium-3, and although this seems to have died away, mainly due to it being a stupid idea, I'm sure some company wanting to be ahead of the curve was engineering some form of mining equipment suitable for freezing temperatures, or claiming some government subsidy to that effect. Perhaps I'm way off the mark, and geoengineering in weather is more economical to heat the continent for its exploration, regardless of millions dying around the world to get to those profits, although certain groups might think that's a win-win scenario. I used to think that maybe Antarctica should be claimed by freemen creating a new land, but not knowing what is really going on down there, or the extent of the experiments, or the incredibly adverse conditions, I'm not sure now. So why would you wish to claim a new land? To kick-start a new world of pioneers, a group who wants to start afresh, people who wish to feel the exhilaration of real life, knowing it's hard but honest work, where you have all the responsibility, risk, but at the same time all the opportunity you wish to, with the freedom to exercise it. But the point of this video is that a large number of people don't seem to ask me on a regular basis, well, what is your solution to the problem of today's society? If they did, I would probably decide it was really all about the land, or the lack of claimable land to be more precise. Many that feel trapped in this false reality believe escape is best sought by beating the masters at their own game, through their own created courts or loopholes in the law, by discarding straw men or inciting civil disobedience. But I feel the legal system is so corrupt by time that even the good police and judges are bound somehow by an expectation of what is believed good for the created society, and not the individual's rights or the spirit of the law. An example might be that you could argue that taxes may not be lawful, but the court might rule one must pay taxes, or where would that leave society? The justice then gets lost in a debate of what people are expected to do, not what is actually law. The question might be asked, when did a slave ever really win over its master in a court run by judges who were put there by those very masters? Now, imagine having an area not claimed by the current powers. Perhaps you are on a new landmass created from large modular floating islands, each one capable of connecting with another to ultimately make and form a new continent of sorts. Easy enough on a flat surface like a lagoon, but harder due to potentially massive waves out at sea. However, surround the colony with a massive ring that could break the waves, and you might have something. A man has already created life on a small island scale on a lagoon, the links below. And there are more and more companies moving forward with ideas today, with so-called seasteading ideas for the oceans, from expensive oil rig type structures to the modular designs which seem cheaper but more susceptible to poor weather. The ideas are great, but the problem I worry about is who will be able to afford this new freedom. The dream is certainly alluring. The world today is mostly water, so why not create a place to live free of petty rules and slavery? Imagine if you could do this as a pioneer, where your life is measured in your own hard work and help from your neighbours, where there is just law, where there is minimal government, enough only for dealing with the outside world, like passports, defence, visitors, that sort of stuff, where there's a thriving tourism by those curious to come and see the creation of the new frontier, where ships can dock and enjoy the amenities, a floating landmass so large it would eventually have its own climate. A place scientists may wish to move to not only study and improve the continent, but work together for actual cures and true improvement of society. It's an interesting dream. There are floating cities now in the form of massive cruise ships, to give an example of what can be achieved. True, it would be a place with all the risks and rewards to be made, and a place to be defended for its true freedom, but it would be all the challenge of colonizing Mars without having to leave the Earth. Use the best and simplest laws and community guidelines that worked from the past, make a true constitution never allowing power out of the hands of the people, and you could start again without having to fight a losing battle in own courts. In international waters, I'm not sure if you would class this continent as a vast vessel or a landmass. A legal group would probably be needed to protect the new ideas and freedoms in courts until such time as the continent could defend itself fully from the usual suspects. Now, I'm sure there will be a great number of people with negative comments about how it can't be done. Well, before you type away, think of the possibilities instead if you can, and bear in mind this small idea may very well be the last chance the Woken might have to make the life they believe should be a reality. Would it not be worth investing in a true future? I could go on and on, as there are so many questions and answers. However, those are for you to imagine and discuss. After all, this is just an idea, now offered to your imagination to grow. I only hope something tangible can be achieved before the nations try and create laws to prevent it from happening. I would, however, find it ironic that if we are seen as merely vessels from being registered at our birth, and in the dock if we have to go to court for some reason, all the while susceptible to maritime law, that all this was hinting at the escape from their unjust matrix, and was in fact the freedom that scuttled their plans.